So this is Max. He is building the mod shocks for the FRS. Boom! Did you know those are for an FRS?
Sure did.
It's a fast one, isn't it?
Yeah, fastest car here.
Damn right.
Ready to race.
Hey, welcome back to We Cars 24/7. I'm Steve, the guy that makes videos with his camera phone. Today we are working on the 2JZ FRS. It's a drag car with license plates. However, right now it's got its street wheels on, the new 19 by 8.5 Pinkies. That hot tuner boy sauce. Which we've been cruising around on the streets, having a good time and all that, but it's time to go back to the drag strip and see if we can get into that 8-second range. Last year ran 958 at 146, so we're looking to improve upon that. In order to do that, should be changing out the rear suspension today. We've got to put the slicks and the new window net and the seat belts that are in date and all that good stuff on the car as well. But the main focus of this video will be to take this rear suspension off of the car, show you what I have on there now, show you what we're putting on there, give you all the part numbers in case you want to put it onto your car. Today we are happy to be at Full Blown Motorsports, my brothers, where they take care of us. If you're wondering about my CRX, where it is, I'm wondering about it too. It's actually in storage.
I too have CRX withdrawals from time to time, so I just come to the shop where they've got lots of that 90s JDM. They got this US Y49, couple glass tops in the mix, some right-hand drive Supras. I mean, they are bringing in the fire these days over here at Full Blown Motorsports. But mine will be done one day. Well, and the reason why I haven't gone drag racing yet this year is I was waiting for this, which is my new built bottom end. It's got the Titan main caps, CP pistons, boost line rods, all that good stuff. Currently running the stock block, and so I was kind of worried about it. We're running about 762 on the horsepower right now. Ran 958 last year, so we're gonna hope the new suspension will get us into the 8s without changing the block, and then we'll do the block this winter and all that. But that's why we were waiting and being on the streets. First thing we gotta do is take these upper plates that hold the, oh geez, turbo specs on that one. One of the things you'll notice is that I went to a shorter 10-inch spring, and the reason I did that was to get these collars up out of the way of the axle. They're not real close, but you can see I definitely wanted to keep those collars up out of the way, and the way I did that was I went to a shorter spring. All right, here is the suspension that we've taken off of the car. Now, when I got the car, it had D2 suspension, or D2 coilovers. It still runs the D2s on the front. This plate is from the D2. Now, your factory plate might work, I don't know, but basically it's a stud top shock with a lower eyelet. So basically what I did was I used the QA1 off-the-shelf line to custom fit this to the car. Worked with Full Blown Motorsports to do it in the happenstance that they decided to sell this rear setup for all you FRS BRZ owners. And they were like, you know what, we've got builds to do, we've got dyno tuning, we're just got too much going on. So these just happened to work out good for me because I had the upper plate from the D2s, and then in this bushing down here, this car does use a 12 millimeter lower bolt size, and QA1 does offer us this sleeve that I think it's a 9035 135. I'm gonna put it up on the screen right now if I got that wrong. I don't know what the original length of this was, but you can see I've cut down a little bit just so it fits down in the channel of the lower control arm. So this is a good shock for having control of both the up and down. The D2s that came on this car, they're rebound only adjustable. That means the valving going down, I have no control over it. So when I take off from the starting line, this thing dips real hard. And if I don't have enough spring rate in it,
then it's just gonna dip hard, and I don't want it to dip real hard. The spring that I'm running on this is a 10-inch tall 175. This one is black, so it's a 10 HT 175B, like Baker, or black, because the spring is black. So my intention here is to get you all of the part numbers. You can buy all of these parts right off of Summit or Jags or wherever you get parts outside of this upper plate. Now the reason we're taking these off of the car is because when we did go to the track, the back end is squatting down a lot. And even with the compression on full stiff on these, it's still squatting down a lot, as you can see. One of the reasons for that is, well, I'm obviously running a softer spring so that my street drive is nice and cushy. These work great on the streets, but for the drag strip, that soft spring is not helping me. This isn't just a drag car, or I just firm up the spring. That would give me a little bit more control on the compression valving. Simply, I need more control over the back end movement of this car. And the new shocks we're going to be going to are the QA1 Mod Series shock. Now this is just a whole different level of shock in terms of the control that we're going to have. These have twice the force curve of these double adjustables, so we just have more ability to control that back end from squatting down. I'm going to still be running that softer spring, but I'm going to have more control of this. Think of it like this. Like you were going to an arm wrestling competition and you've got a 20-year-old son, and he's a pretty big kid, and he might do okay at that arm wrestling competition. And when this car leaves the line, it leaves with so much force and just, that kid's just not going to win that arm wrestling competition. Now, you take Stallone from the movie Over the Top, and you're going to win. This shock right here is Stallone. Actually, the other shock in the box that looks like this, I'm going to name him Stallone too. Now the cool thing about this shock is these valve packs are interchangeable. You can pop these Allen heads off, pop the valve pack out, put either a softer or a firmer valve pack. They also have an extra firm valve pack, but you can change the whole valve curve of the shock just by changing that, and no air, no oil, nothing comes out of there. You can actually do it in the pits on the car. Now this D2 plate has a rubber isolator there, as well as, don't drop it, a spring isolator on the top that I've reused. If your upper plate doesn't have that, you're going to want to get an MKO3 from QA1. The MKO3 is these two bushings, the two washers, and the nuts. Just in case your plate doesn't have the isolator already in it, use this to isolate it. One of the other things that's going to come with your mod shocks, if you decide to go the mod shock route, is these thrust bearings. And you'll see it's got a little roller bearing in there and two washers. So you want to put the roller bearing in the center. Makes like a needle bearing sandwich. Now, when you put your spring on and you're adjusting the collar, this is going to spin independently on those rollers. Just makes it easier to make the ride height adjustments. And if you get the single or double adjustable setup, part number on this roller bearing is going to be 7888-109. That's going to come with two of them, so you'll just need two for the rear. Now, as I said earlier, there is a right and a left version of this shock, and that really just depends on which side of the adjustment knobs the hose comes off of. Now this lower part is indexable. I can spin this, and I want to be very, very precise in how I mount this, which way the knobs are facing. I want to figure out where this hose can come off. I do have these brackets that I can mount. I don't know where I'm going to position the hose just yet, but I have it where it's indexable here, so I want to be deliberate in what I'm doing, and also try to figure out where this canister mount will go.
I'm just not sure yet, but I think I'll figure it out. So right now I'm mocking this up at ride height for the slicks, which I know from the bottom washer to this bolt's 13 inches. Right about there. Right about there, that's where I run it with the slicks. So I'm using a muffler jack to mimic that. Okay, so the shock is mounted. I think this was the most ideal way to do that. The line's not going through anything. Now these stainless lines, if they rub on anything, they will rub a hole into it. They will just keep going. But the reason I wanted to mimic that is because I've got this mount that I've put on. This is a tough mount because it's got Allen heads on the back side. Oh yeah, you can see them up in there. So trying to mount it to like the frame rail or this cross member, it's just I can't get to the back side of it to put those Allen heads in. So I put it onto this shield. Now that shield is not the most sturdy thing, but this just needs to hold that canister. But the reason I wanted to put this at ride height right now is this is exactly how it'll be set up. I can see that hose is touching right there. And so before I tighten this clamp down, I can adjust this in the mount so that it has the most clearance before I lock it down. And looks like we're all clear. So I'll tighten it up in there, and that's kind of what I got. One of the cool things about the mod shocks is you've seen like a traditional spanner wrench. Sometimes they'll have a handle. You bust knuckles and try to get the whole thing up there. This is the wrench for the mod shocks, and it resembles a bent screwdriver. This is going to be part number T, like Tom, 121W. And check out how cool this is. So this collar in the mod shocks, you can set it in there. You can rotate this wherever you need to go, and then you can put it over on this side if you really wanted to. You can go that way, and it just makes life that much easier. And I really like this design. It's not like anything I've seen before, and it's just super cool when you're not having to get that whole handle up in there. And the bent factor on this, is that a hole? That is a hole. The bent factor on this really helps you get in there and make good adjustments without killing yourself. Kind of an idea of where I need to set this for the ride height, but ultimately we're going to be adjusting the ride height, putting the drag wheels on it and stuff. Now that this side's done, just got to put this side in over here and hope that there's not too many obstructions like that exhaust. Another thing I'll mention is at full droop, which this is sitting at now. We want to make sure we've got some slack on that hose. You can see the hose is touching the sway bar right now, but we want to make sure we don't have any pulling where we're ripping that hose out at full droop. Well, it is a new day, but I did get the shocks mounted yesterday, and the canisters I'm okay with. I mean, this is on a heat shield that was for the factory exhaust, I believe. It's not the most sturdy thing, but it really just needs to hold these light canisters, and I don't think there'll be any issue with that. Consulting with the paperwork that's come with these mod shocks, you'll find that the low speed bleed is something that will need to be adjusted. I realized that on this shock, well, it's going to be hard to get into there to that low speed bleed with the tire on. So before I put the tire on over on this side, I'm going to get a 3/32 Allen head, and we loosen this center guy here. Let me see if I can get you closer in there. Yay, technology! So what we've got to do is we've got to loosen this center Allen head. It's a 3/32, and also these are the adjustments. There's 3.5 full turns, and so we'll loosen this middle one, make our adjustment to the rebound low speed and the compression low speed, and then we'll tighten back up. On the low speed compression side, I want to start with about a turn and a quarter, and then on the rebound side, we'll do 2.5 turns. And so I'll set those, and then I'll be able to put the wheels and tires on, and we'll set it down and see what it looks like. One and a half. Now we'll lock this guy down. Lock in our settings. And we're good. Now this is important with any coilover. Before you've set your ride height, make sure all your main adjustments are down. I know we did adjust the low speed on this shock, but it's because I can't get to it with the tire on. But when we set the car down on the wheels for the first time, we don't want any of that valving in the shock holding the car up and not showing us the accurate ride height so we can make the adjustments. We're gonna be putting the slicks on. These are 28x9 Mickey Thompson, and the other thing I'm gonna do while we're in here is I'm gonna take the old full-blown lug nuts, which these are aluminum lug nuts, take them on and off a couple times. You know, they're fine, but we are at Full Blown Motorsports, so we'll put a new set of lug nuts. If you want a set of those, they're made in red, green, blue, purple, yellow, gold, whatever. You can see them on the website. Now we can look at the front suspension, see what's going on. We're not making any changes other than a ride height change. These are the D2 coilovers. They are rebound only adjustable, which means I can soften or firm how it extends. So I keep it real soft, keep a nice soft spring here. Gets that front end coming up real easy. Problem is when I shift, the nose dips every time. So I'm in the market for a set of compression also adjustable. So then I can firm up the compression. Front end rises, but I can kind of keep it in the same attitude. As of right now, I talked to QA1, they don't have a solution for this because they're not really in the import game. So they don't have a spindle mount that will mount here. So I'm kind of stuck with what I got here. But yeah, the goal is to hopefully get the front end coming up to transfer the weight back to the back tires, and then kind of hold it up there and have it level out down track. Instead, what I've got right here with this rebound adjustable and a soft spring, I got the front end coming up real nice, and then when I shift, it goes doink, shift again, doink, and doink is not gonna get me to the finish line faster. So we're gonna make a ride height adjustment on this just because I had to drop it down real low for the street wheels and tires, and then we'll check the ride height versus what the slicks and skinnies look like. On the front here, instead of the fancy wheel there, we're gonna be running, this is a Bogart 15 by like 4 or something like that. The slick itself is a 26 by 4.5, 15. Okay, we got all our wheels and tires on. My son came over last night and put the parachute on, so I'll have to just hook up the cord there. But before I drop it down and check the ride height, it's gonna be a good time to just go over all the bolts and things underneath here. Make sure we don't have any leaks, which I know I have a leak. I put a new O-ring in this drain plug and it's leaking. So I'll fix that. This is the underside of the 2J with the CD009 transmission. That's the Full Blown Motorsports mounts to do that, and the conversion. Here is the transmission cross member going to the carbon fiber QA1 drive shaft. One thing I do have to do on this car to be too legit to quit is I've got to put a drive shaft loop, which is a thick metal hoop around this, and that is for NHRA in case the drive shaft comes apart. It does not become a battering ram whipping around underneath here. Now this is the QA1 carbon fiber drive shaft. Carbon fiber drive shaft, if it were ever to break, it comes apart in like broom strands, so it doesn't actually damage the car or my booty. But NHRA says you gotta have that drive shaft loop within 6 inches of the U-joint, I believe, so I'm gonna be looking at that. Just a good time under the car to check everything out. You can see how low I'm getting on those street wheels and tires. I'm messing up that exhaust a little bit. One thing I was thinking was that class I'm going to be running next month does not require me to have a full exhaust going out back. So I may take this off, that drive shaft loop. Geez, it must be like 7 pounds or something, the universal one from Jegs. So I might take this off and just run the open header, because loud is proud, and that we will be. There's our front struts that I've made adjustments to, and we'll, after I go through all the bolts underneath on the underside, I don't know, I'm weird like that. I just like to make sure all the bolts are tight and try not to die. Well, I did decide to take this exhaust out just to save some weight. I mean, I am trying to run 8s anyway on the backup engine. Don't have much of a muffler, just a little Burns stainless race muffler guy. And I'm gonna add this drive shaft loop, which I'm working on now. So the old bathroom scale over there has shown the exhaust to weigh 23.4 pounds, or the exhaust section. And the loop is going to be 6, so all in all, I'll have a weight savings of 17.4 after adding that. And I think the exhaust will be fine shooting down at the ground. Boom, 1 drive shaft loop from Jegs, part number 60662. Yes, my welds look like ass berries. I had this big welder and it's very powerful, so I was blowing holes and being cautious of that, but you know, I'm not trying to fool you guys. I'm not gonna paint it and then show it to you. I'm gonna show you what it was. So it looks like I've got good clearance around the drive shaft, and that should get me legal. NHRA, you like that? Try to catch me riding dirty. Shit. It's looking pretty low, and it's probably going to get a little bit lower as I drive out, but I really want to hear what that exhaust sounds like without that rear section, because duh, I want to hear it. It's fun. Other things to do to the car before we go racing next month, but that will conclude the rear suspension video for all you drag race or even street guys with wanting a QA1 setup, an actual double adjustable setup, which is not easy to find amongst all the import brands out there. Again, let's recap the 3 setups that you could run. You could run a single adjustable QA1 coilover. That's going to control both up and down at the same time with 18 settings, so you're softening or firming both at the same time. The rear shock you're going to use is a GS501. I'm going to put all these on the bottom too. I believe I have all the part numbers correct, but if I screw up, well then I'll change it. You're going to run a GS501 shock. You're going to run a 9035-135 lower sleeve through that bushing. That's going to get you to your 12mm bolt down low. And then we're going to run a 10HT 250, I would say is a good spring rate for the streets, especially you guys that are wanting to do like autocross and turning and carving corners and stuff. I think that 10HT 250, that's a silver spring, add a B on the end of that for black. I think that's going to be a good setup. And then you just use your top hats from, if you have coilovers existing, or I think even the stock one would work. I'd have to check on that. If you want that double adjustable version, now you've got a control knob like was on the car, for one for downward compression and one for upward rebound. A really good all-around setup. I think if I had a firmer spring rate, it would have done a little bit better at the track drag strip. But that's going to be a GD501. You're still going to order that 9035-135 sleeve to throw in the lower, and then you'll run your spring 10HT 250, 10HT 250B for the black one.
put your upper, come on, Steve. You put your upper plate onto that shock and basically bolt it in. Now that lower sleeve is longer than you need it, so measure the sleeve that you pull out of there, or measure the inner channel. I forgot to measure it, and otherwise I would give you the measurement, but I did cut that down a little bit to make it narrower and fit down in the channel of that lower control arm. And then if you're going serious, which I am, drag racing or autocross, whatever you want, you need more control over that shock. You'll want to go with the Mod Series shocks. That's the M531 CR and CL. That's just depending on which side the hose comes off of, but M531 CR CL. Now that shock's going to come with a bearing in the lower connection, so we've got to swap that to the bushing and then put the sleeve in. So you'll pull that bearing out, and then the bushing that you'll order is a 9032-390 bushing. It's a one-piece bushing. It's a little bit hard to press it in there. I had QA1 do it for me. What I found also is that if you take that bushing and you slice it down the middle, you can put the bushing halves in from either side of the shock, push your sleeve in, all the same. So the M531 CR and CL, the 9032-390 on the bushing, and then again that same 9035-135 on the 12mm sleeve. Upper plates from either the stock car or your aftermarket coilovers, bolt them in, you're all good to go. So thanks for watching We Cars 24/7. We'll catch you on the next one.